Bara ieri, agus 100,000 fáilte wedi tí jo meg I Gilrúnan in is mór. Seo de seachtain yn y warta, agus pasúlam go bhaintse tainiú, sása agus sprúí, as chuilead a bhacaisib agus ar bhólaisib le gáháin. Ní réidir le mhaim festival ach ag an am chéna, bhí se go hálainn, gur híriú orm achtan seoineo. Fláirteach go sin ála cínteach go mé héin siarsta saoil, agus Dr. Díga leor ar amach ní fláirta go dibh. I chébrad a chas mar á na gur údar áisiom a bhein seo, agus údar mór áisiom gur chasú benarm ar báil. I bhdeanam mu dhé mar dar amáid na rithug me mu chéad chuairt ar híomh na héireann siars na blianta. Ní go me chofada le 1908 ach go dtíoine seáda na dhé. Agus tá sí héanagus a deabhrann seo agus bhreálam agus is 1,000 fáilte rompe, gohain is mór go dtíobhann tá ghuiilta cineann is mór agus sinní eile Scanlin. Bhuail bosta. Nis fwy sian cwpwmed, be mwyn I geistiwcht le chwrsys o wdr y lewyd hi was Galway. Agus ar dŵs, chwnig mi sy'n lewr sa tamol ochan. Agus I mesw le blenwyd ffectwyd ystod I marfran. Mae'r ni henni'n lewr y morolwm agus ni henni'n lewr y trwmolwm. Mae'r wltw na ni lewyd ach yn asal nhw sy'n tys y lepo ni'r arna am di. Ach, ta pectwr braid I glwdwch. Agus na di fi me caint ledes yn otio Máirtín Jamesy lecture machar mai. Agus dwrs tia, gwyd I chesio nyn yn y gwein oed. Agus di fi na mynd I bren o ochr ni'r chwyd. Ach, hargol sia gyda ben yn ein dilwm rŵn I ta am. Agus Mae'n etti ddach digyn si be, y secretary. Agus, ma'n yn gwrdd wyd si sy'n fol yn gwysio, ac ffoc yma ag I hyn ennill le a un amach, cech I nechar o di. Raymond Mór as y grapwch Little Milon. Bai det, bwynt o ffera. Fi eisiau bwth y cyti o flerti. Agus ta ar o dywon fwy yn un chwi, fi an sex life igi. Fi as cyn sgwr, gas hwyd eich. Mae'r hwyd mysio gael y mwyd, da fi gan gwrdd yma dyn I cyn taro. Bych nhw'n a bych dyn nhw siain I wan. Agus anw chwa tam I môr go gael, agus eisiau hen post eich benas orin. Nôr a hyrnyn, wynt I chylifid I, chwan tam o chornid. Agus anw na I mysio gael I swast I fferas bal na croegir. Mae'n ceti'n solos na wasa o anna. I tia cas oran ar ymwch o plopio'n toltag. Agus I tia bant anchraig as yn oran tio fi egi. Agus oran was ti wyd. Chiaf mwyn deg yn am, gwrdd yn I gwael fi on. Ni roedd sain yn as na chi'n dewl ti a Máirtín Mór a sgior gwrws. Yr eich chai, treid ym gwylferstad I aras. Mae'r cweinion mysio moig. Yr orod y chynt mae'r sio. Fi gochyd capel ceglis y stoblo. Y glwys yn ordie, agos I gian ffwb sys. Agos o nosna iligidwr, e gwael hars gwarti, agos lian yn tred yn ysyn ach nid ys amser. Ach bedyr le cwna di gwych mwyn I mach ffos yn yw. Gerdd y horlwg yn ferstasyn, I logr o se. Mwartir yn siat yn gweud gynnu, y sawndol gydes. Yr ein chwi, ta yn fan, ysgrifo lewr, da sy'n sio lorin yw gysyn tron o'n lorin e. Agus ta'n morstir e hen, Joseph Ó Cuaig le fel y gwyd cestyn ni ar. Nys, ei bro siag gweil gyw gysberlo. Eti sy'n mach ffoli by, gwmach dada, ni roch dyn ni'n cynt ewa ni rig me. Ach, ni fe'n siansyn agi, twr siag yn do hen syp. Be mi si yn sio, agus be me y cynnol tŵl ar op. Reit oedd y hwgtor oedd. Agus, ni ac y dwan ar ydi o fach a happy le lari y twrth corta deara go deo cúca bhuiine Éon chuig. Dó mar an féidir le marráile benis. A chan bheanna hén a chuir an naí agus go dúir sé bóla mór boste agus atá sin seo. Jackie Uí Chionna. Nes i jo, tá mar réile nead agus scoile agus over to you. Cormagli.
And well, I'm body le chéile mar dú sémas agus spráil go chuir sé fáid rúin agus smá way. Gina mu a gcuisné láta mu gailge agus spéirla. Mar is fearr agus mar a bhí muinte í látaí an go dtíbin, rud céanna gailge agus spéirla. Tá Jackie seo agus tá sí sásta ceistena í ragart. Tá gaolta le líam ó Máirtín seo, ra sin agus Bei tá agus gcuil ar leid bháin le Máirtín Mór McDonogh an seo, so caiimiid bheith chorm agus balanced agus chudí mar sin. Ach ag an céanna is staid é seo agus ní cheartmhaoine bheith i sé siar bhfuil rud a bheith agus dearan gúil muid sácha cíalhúris le ghlacha le rudaí a hála deadhhar a bhíomh na staidí agus mar sin de. I'll give you all an opportunity to ask questions in English later, but we'll start in Irish. But any questions you will have, she's here and she will answer. She will answer. So I'll start off by Jackie Kedfalter, it is. Better good inch when gan bhfuil ró eis, cén bhaint go tíideach de bhí ag Máirtín Mór McDonogh le áireann?
Well, tá sin deas éasca de ragart mar is as cilmhuirmhigh áireann a bháthairt, so rugadh i gcilmhuirmhigh an óirí a Hernan mar a dúirt Séamas, ja. An óirí a Hernan an tanna bhí arthaí. Rugadh an seohí. Iníon ceangas na hinín do bhaintear Máirtín Hernan, Máirtín an Choirnéil mar a gléitar bhí sé sin ina báile ar an Uí seo, an béileh ar an Uí seo. Agus rugadh agus tógadh an seo agus an sin fós sí Tommy Raymond McDonogh, so bhóg siad an sin bhí sin na chonaí nar a fós siad a dúspóire, bhí siad an na chonaí a litirhán, bas litirhán ahar Máirtín Mór Tommy Raymond, agus bhóg siad an sin go gáile. So sin an ceangal, bhí an ceangal an láidir idir máthir Máirtín Mór agus muintir áireann i gcónaí go dtí go bhfuair siad bás, agus fós in dhéir sin chuine sí suas an ceangal sin.
Bhí muintir áireann dílis go Máirtín Mór, na bhí sin na heachta dála.
Bhí,
cínte.
Agus bhí sé ina cóirleoir ar Uí áireann ar cóir chundaí na gaiilehis, bhí sé sin ceangas na cóirleoirí a bhí acu, so rud atá áit mar ní raibh sin na chonaíonn seo, ach bhí sé sin mar cóirleoir ar na Uí, so bhí ceangal an láidir an sin.
His mother was born here. His father was from Lettermullen. They were married in Lettermullen, and then they moved into Galway and set up the empire, we would call it.
That's right.
So the link with Arden was very, very strong all along, naturally enough, through his mother. His mother's people were bailiffs for the landlords of this island, the Digby's of Dublin. So you can imagine in the Ireland of the land war and so on, that caused a few problems, especially when you were dealing with the likes of bhFlai's father and stuff like that. You know, there was a clash, a big clash. And as a result of that, you had certain things happening which were serious enough. Nach bhfuil sé sin fí.
Seo ach chuis sé siar bhád níos fuideanna sin ó thaobh an sort an chuí gur tháinig muintear hir ná an go háireann, sin chuid gon scéal agus sin chuid gon scéal a hagan sa stach is san leabhar the House of Gold, a scríomh ó Fleacht in dhé sin. Agus ceapas gur go bhéidir gur biúm just slochtún leabhar a léamh an is go bheice mai síliar céird go dtír go bhíad osach muna bhfuil an leabhar léite ag daoine tá sé deachra hiiscint céir a hála. It might be useful just to set this in context, I think, Mona Rish to live, and it's to do with how the Hernans came to Inishmore, Dúspóide, and it's an interesting story. They came here as a result of the turf trade, basically. No turf on Arran, and the turf came out from Galway. So the Hernans arrived in Arran as a result of the turf trade. As the islands were dependent on Connemara for turf, a brisk trade developed, and two of the Connemara men who serviced that trade were Bartley Hernan of An Cruch in Lettermullen and his brother Michael. The young men owned a púchán, a Galway hooker, which they used to ferry turf to the islands in the 1790s. They obviously became well known and well liked on the island because O'Hiernan, Colin O'Hiernan, as her star na Hillan Scrífa ige, Colin O'Hiernan wrote a wonderful history of the Hernan family, and he records that, quote, on one occasion when the brothers were in Portmurvey or Kilwervig with a load of turf, there was a wedding in progress in the village of Kilmurvey. The brothers were invited and accepted the invitation. Arran in those days was more prosperous than Connemara, and a wedding was a great social occasion, with plenty of food, drink and jollification. Whatever happened, whether it was the food, drink or romance, Bartley was reluctant to return home, and his brother had to return without him. Ach, bhí níos mó sa scéal ná sin. There was a lot more to the story than that. Romance indeed may have been a factor, but it would be naive to suggest that the young Anne O'Flaherty, on whom Bartley Hernan had fixed his attentions, was not an extremely attractive marriage prospect. The lands around Kilmurvey were owned, as was most of the island, by the Digby family, who leased the land to two families in particular, the O'Flahertys and the Durans. Anne O'Flaherty's father had two daughters and no male heirs, which was the significant point, obviously. So when Bartley, described by O'Hiernan as a hard-working and likeable young man, made the decision to settle in Kilmurvey and married Anne within a year, he soon stood to inherit a considerable holding. Bartley Hernan encouraged his brother to join him on Arran, where the prospects for making a decent living were far better than at home. The plan worked, for O'Hiernan moved to Kilmurvey. Fortunately for Michael, the Duran family also were in a similar position to the O'Flahertys, with daughters and no male heirs. And as a result, Michael eventually inherited the Duran holding. The Hernan brothers of Lettermullen then set about consolidating their positions in Kilmurvig. So sinna an scale, they marry into the island and take amongst the best land on the island through dint of marrying the daughters of families that did not have heirs.
But that's the me hiskele. No Flaherty's that I guessed in Chin. She need no Flaherty's in Murray House. Tap more. Need with the kinds. We're not talking there of Liam O'Flaherty's people. We're talking about the rulers, you could say, are the immediate rulers of the island where we were yesterday in Kilmurvey House. They married in there, and of course then things went along, and eventually O'Hiernan was the bailiff on the island, isn't that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask, you'd be allowed to ask all kinds of questions here, and I'm going to ask Kesh Grama. I'm going to ask her a question which is not nice, and I'm kind of, I'll have to ask it. You got money to write this book. Did you feel compromised?
No. Maris Starry may, because I'm a historian, that's my job. Most historians, most researchers find funding through various different agencies. But the bottom line is that your academic credentials have to stand on their own. You cannot possibly write a book that is bought and paid for by somebody and then write what is effectively a hagiography. So that was never a question. Keense diixidas on postdoc fellowship rinne but it was completely up to me on Taiji Ianov. Agus and I'd have to be honest and say, never at any point in the proceedings did the McDonoghs say, don't put that in, take that out, write that differently. So I couldn't have possibly have stood for that. That was very clear from the outset. There would be no imposition on my academic independence in order to tell the story. What I found was what I found, and I told it the way I could tell it. So bhí na mílte scéalta agus ráftaí agus daoine ginsin scéalta chun Uí McDonogh, like everybody had an opinion of Uí McDonogh, but unless there was hard evidence to support it, documentary evidence to support it, it did not go in the book. So everything that's in there is resourced and referenced and verifiable. There's no roughly, there's no supposition, etc. So,
Jenny?
Yeah, something that we as a society would like to find out what your research has brought up. You know that we were behind republishing or publishing for the first time The House of Gold.
yeah.
And when we had the launch in the city library, I was left binding the books while this launch was going on. And there was actually somebody who came up to me and almost threatened me and said, do you know that this land is owned by the McDonoghs? That you're on at the moment. And there was this suggestion that, you know, I was doing something improper by having kind of been behind, I suppose, the inspiring this republication. So what I want to know from you is, what has your research brought up about the involvement of the McDonoghs in suppressing the publication of this of The House of Gold, which after all was the first book that the censorship board banned.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's an interesting question that we as a society would have. What is the actual evidence there that you have found?
None is the honest answer, and I did go looking for it. I can tell you that was one of the more interesting stories. Was, you know, the book was banned. For those of you who are not familiar with The House of Gold, it's a work of fiction in inverted commas about this family of Gombean men called the Costellos, and the main character Raymond Moore is based on Máirtín Mór. It's him to a T. There's no doubt about that, and it's a pretty vicious, savage attack on the McDonoghs. Most of it very justified, it has to be said. But I was very keen to find out, did the McDonoghs have any influence in having the book banned? And there's no doubt that they didn't. I went looking for it. I looked in the records of the Censorship and Publications Office. It's not there. There's no letters from them. If they did it without putting anything in writing. But the one thing I would say about it is, you know, McDonogh is depicted in a pretty horrendous manner, you know. But it's a very excitable book in the sense that it's about murder, priestly lust. There's all sorts of stuff in it. But O'Flaherty knew that at the very outset, you know. And in writing to his own agent, he said, and I quote it in the book. He says to one of his agent at one point, "My new novel is going splendidly, but it is becoming rather terrible. It will frighten the life out of people." Now, those were his words before he ever published it. So, Caigur of Isaga, he must have known that this was going to get banned, you know, and yet it's intriguing to me that he still went ahead and wrote it and published it. And it was incredibly useful to me in writing the biography. And Dinish me scale go Josie and Shin Wishin couple law hin. When I began doing the research, you know, it's important to say that there wasn't a single piece of paper left by this man. He left nothing behind. Absolutely nothing. Not one diary, not one letter, nothing. The house where he lived in was sold and demolished. There are no photographs of him as a young man, except one. And in the only photograph I have of him, he's 40 years of age. And he's only there because he was elected as a councillor, and he's in a group photograph. So he's a man who kept a very, very, very low profile. So you'd sort of say, well, where do you start? How do you find out about this man? So my first protocol was, Leabhar, Tashkrifa, Fui. This is the book that's written about him. This is him, you know, so what can this tell me? So, on Leabhar, you know, I started my first week's work was, I'm going to sit down and read The House of Gold. And I stopped after 5 pages. Because after 5 pages I said, if I read this is what's going to be in this book here. I'm going to be too influenced by what this man says. And I don't want that to happen. I do not want that to be the case. So I stopped it and I put it away. And in fact, it wasn't this copy because this hadn't even come out. I managed to get a first edition of the book that was published in Germany because it had been banned in Ireland. So I got a first edition and I put it away, and I didn't start reading it again until I'd written the book. And for a historian to sort of do that is an interesting dynamic, because I deal with facts and what's verifiable and what you can prove. And this is a work of fiction. But I have to say, when I read it, it was one of those eureka moments where, you know, na ceistní a bhí a goil tríd mo cheann, and a bhí a chur mar here, what's this man about? All the things, and I was writing it and thinking, there's something not right here. Why is he doing this? Why did he do that? What's this relationship with his mother about? What's going on there? And then I read this, and almost every single question that I had was answered in this, in the person of Raymond Mór Costello. So McDonogh knew, O'Flaherty knew McDonogh very, very well, and his insights into what motivated him and where he was coming from were extraordinarily illuminating. So it was literally a case of, I got it. I suspected this about him, this says I was right. I suspected this about him, this says I was right in my assumptions. So, agus ní na rudaí atá ceart faoi, ní rudaí maithí, na rudaí deasa iad, you know? So, for example, if I could give you one example, Joe, when I was doing the research, it's always, as I said, very little details make all the difference. So when I looked, for example, at his death certificate, the death certificate of Honoria Hernan, she was only 45 when she died. So I went looking at the death certificates, and the death certificate said that she died of heart failure at 45, so, you know, very, very young. But it also said that at the time of her death, she was accompanied by her son. Not her husband, not any of the other boys, but Máirtín. Máirtín was with her. And that says to me, okay, that's a special relationship there, which I had suspected and heard from other people. But then when you look at the actual, the description of him in the House of Gold, he says, it tells you a little bit about the mother-son relationship between Raymond Mór Costello and his mother. And she's very controlling of him forever. And O'Flaherty says, watching him with her piercing little eyes, she noted the effect her words had on him. She was pleased. She felt that this was her great opportunity for getting rid of her enemy, Nora. Now, Raymond Mór's wife in this is Nora. There's no accident that she's called Nora, because that was Honoria's nickname. Everybody called her Nora, not Honoria. So, she idolised her son with the avaricious love of a peasant woman. She hated Nora for having come between her and her son. For 50 years, Raymond had belonged completely to her. The first time he escaped from her, he was captured. If he had only made Nora suffer by ravishing her body, by making it disfigured and gross in the labours of pregnancy, she would have had some compensation for the tortures of jealousy she suffered. But he had not done so. The woman had remained intact and beautiful, like the figure of a beautiful devil, flaunting in idleness the beauty of her sinful body before the shrivelled, withered bodies of the mother and daughter. So, sinna an sort sinna bhí me cheannagam agus mé déanamh an taide Máirtín Mór. Níor fós sé riamh. He never married. There was 8 of them in the family. 2 of them died young. Of the 6 surviving siblings, only 1 married, and he married in his 50s, and he married his nurse. So why did none of them marry? Mar bhí an máthir ag éirí iad a chuinál leithí, you know, keep the circle tight.
Just to add to that, Láháin bhí becaint le Jackie agus dúirt me lethe is as cárna tháinig muintir Vic Donogh dús. Sin scéal mór eile. They were all from the Cairn area. They came to Lettermullen and then down. So agus bhí becaint leis a bhar seo Colleen O'Hiernan eile. Ní lean chuile gine se Colleen O'Hiernan. Het fáil trú. Colleen O'Hiernan as cárna is fear ítach díobh staide. Agus dúirt me leis Honoria Hernan. Diggin tú? Agus tú che, Honoria Hernan, bhfuil tú cainte nuair in Iarnan. Sin é thug muid tá bhfuil íomhartha go na mar agus an áring. Agus po mi sé leis go dtí Jackie agus dúirt me, forget Honoria, it's Nora, agus dúirt sí. Nora, dúirt sí. Agus po sí ag leabhar ríist. You know, Nora.
That's right.
That explains a lot of it.
Does, yeah, think
My
so,
God.
think so, yeah.
Agus Eureka moment television.
Yeah, no, sin and thank you, Nana. Yeah.
Now,
think so.
Ruth Finish.
Just modulation cash the Kurgenic.
Yeah.
She Jack with them a glaku, nor cur and clan is job. I was not raw chunker up to modulation gilla.
Yeah.
Modulate and Benny.
Yeah.
Because Jack with them glapulation and kui and library and tear show, and skincha and kui a diary shin.
Yeah.
Beidir gur hála sé Catherine ach níl ein fascinate an. There's no evidence to prove that they did. Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 No take me sin gama agus credin goró because the scale at the leabhar amsa Maidir le Brendan Ó Cuaig. Yeah, okay. It's the question really is that they didn't put some influence on the Censorship and Publications Board. I think the book was pretty dramatic enough to be banned because of the priestly lust and all of that stuff in it. But I think you're absolutely right. There was no question that the McDonoghs would not have wanted this out there. But there was no evidence that I could find to say that they did use exert influence, but there was subtle evidence and pressure brought to bear, and they were not, O'Flaherty was not forgiven for writing this book. Absolutely not forgiven for writing this book. And I was told a story that the one member of the McDonogh family who did marry, Dr. Michael McDonogh, had 3 children. Thomas McDonogh, who's now the chief executive of the company and controls multi-million euro McDonogh empire, and his 2 sisters, Honor and Mary Frances, known as Mafra. Honor was a great friend of Brendan Ó Cuaig in the university in UCG when they were both students. And coming up to their graduation, she was having a party in the McDonogh house in Galway. And she was inviting all of her college friends to this party. And her mother asked if she could see the guest list. And she looked at the guest list and she went down the guest list and she came to Brendan Ó Cuaig, line through it. He's not coming into this house. And that was that. So that was just the nephew of the man who'd written the book. He was not forgiven. He was never forgiven. He was never going past that door.
Now, at the same time, you did. Dailche to ruddy fwy weinted McDonogh. Well, ni henioch sé le leor daoine families a bich, no colod a bich, no ni henioch sé leis dig to. Hugtú le tiiscint gur Páistín Ranny a bhí Máirtín Mór. Páistín Ranny, Páistín, do you get the word Páiste? Ranach is a bracken child. Do you know what that means? We're not allowed to use the expression now, but I'll use it anyway. An illegitimate son. Now, that's a pretty serious accusation, you know, to make against a person. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it's a tough one. You know, the first thing I did when I stopped reading The House of Gold, the first thing I did was I went to Little Mullen to meet with John Mabba Jack, who was fantastic to meet, Little Mullen. And he told me a little bit of the background of the family, and what he told me was, the first thing he said to me was, McDonogh's left Little Mullen, Honoria and Thomas left Little Mullen, Guthubbin, more, he had made a young girl pregnant, a young Aaron girl pregnant. That was the Rothley, or the local folklore said that he'd been run out of town, you know. And I've heard since that she wasn't the only one. So clearly there was a lot of shenanigans going on. And Little Mullen, I guess, it's our impression. But I was told that had been the case. Now, how do you prove that? You don't prove that. You can't prove it. But you can if you go looking for the records. So civil registration in Ireland did not begin until 1864. McDonogh, we think, was born in 1860. I'm pretty certain he was born in 1860. So there's no civil registration. So how do you know when he was born? You look at the baptism records, which are the parish registers. So I found it odd initially when I looked at the records for UCG where he went to college, that of the 73 students who registered to go to college in 1878, which is when he went to university. 73 students. He's the only one who doesn't give his age, of 73. So I thought, something writing. Why isn't he committing to his age? So then I went back to say, well, how did he had to be at least 18 to get into the university. So I went looking at the register of the City of London University where he had matriculated. And it says in Shin, his birth was certified by the baptismal cert signed by a Father Mellet of Ankilly in Carrow. So I thought, great, I'll find that in the registers, the parish registers. Father Mellet in 1878 certified that McDonogh was baptised in the parish of Killeen in 1878. So when I went back to Carrow, look at the register. There's no such record in the register, nowhere. So I looked at all the other parish registers for all of the diocese of Galway, Tuam, all of the various different dioceses. And there's no birth registered for Honoria and Thomas McDonogh in 1859, 60, 61 or 62. Nowhere at any point. So where did this Father Mellet, get this facsimile? Well, he didn't, is the bottom line. It's a complete work of fiction in order to legitimise a baptism that didn't actually happen, or if it did happen, it certainly didn't happen when he said it happened. So that means there's a story there to be told. And I think, and again, the Richt, it took the Rashwig and Kanga later in Hall Yower, it's fascinating to me. Mordor Honoria is known as Nora. In the House of Gold, Nora is Raymond Moore's wife. She's a glorious looking creature, attractive woman, but he's impotent with her. He hasn't consummated the marriage, and yet he's very possessive of her. But Honoria is known to have had a child outside of wedlock when she was 16. So if you start joining up the dots, you're seeing O'Flaherty really getting at McDonogh in a way that he knows is going to hurt him to his core. He's saying, I know that you were born outside of wedlock, and I'm going to do it by putting in this book a Nora who gets pregnant as a 16-year-old. And I'm going to, your sins are not forgiven. You might have thought you've put a nice veneer of respectability on it, you've got plenty of money, you're the top dog in Galway, everybody respects you, but I know your secret, and I'm going to put it into this book. And he did that. Now, we capas grúisi an spéisiúil iné a géisteach le maras leis an Curry Láthar. What you had to say about him having this daughter out of wedlock? I mean, that was just extraordinary to me. We should have met it somewhere along the line, but to me that was just fascinating. It's a sin that I believe the family wanted to keep hidden, and I think Honoria, his mother, kept her close to him and made sure he didn't marry because she did not want that story getting out. She wanted to keep this veneer of respectability there. That's my belief anyway, I'm pretty certain.
I heard the same story about them leaving Mullen.
Yeah.
But whoever was telling me said maybe he wasn't to the father of his grandfather, Máirtín Tommy Raymond, that maybe he wasn't too worried about the girl being pregnant, although at that time it would have been a big story, as you know. But these people being a bit above the rest of us might be getting away with things. But that his real reason was that it was Nora Hernan from Arden, and that he hated the Hernans from Arden. Would that make sense?
Yes, that's part of it. But this is a complete. You'd call it a hatchet job in most modern contexts. He's going to get at them in every way he can. He gets at the McDonaghs for being gone being men. Níl delta bifway shin, right? But however, on top of that, there is also this sense of his resentment of the fact that the Hernans had ruled Arran with a rod of steel. They had been responsible for, if you like, putting the O'Flaherty's, Liam O'Flaherty and Tom O'Flaherty's family, you know, to one side, that they were the ones who were the literary people, but the McDonoghs had all the money and all the status. But it was much more personal than that, and it really is about the eviction of the Hernans, by Bartley Hernan, who was McDonogh's uncle, of the O'Flahertys. And there was a question about that in the book that I just wanted to have a look at. O'Flaherty's portrayal of McDonoghs as typical of the ruthlessly ambitious dynastic families who emerged to dominate the business and political worlds of independent Ireland is to a degree justifiable. The family's calculated and tenacious rise to power represented everything that O'Flaherty, who had committed to the communist cause briefly in the early 1920s, hated. Political philosophies aside, however, O'Flaherty and his extended family had a much more personal reason to dislike the McDonogh family. The O'Flaherty family had been the subject of an attempted eviction from their home in Gortnagapple in 1892. And it was fascinating for me, and an Tachel, Echo, which I just special. And Tom O'Flaherty gives a searing account of the experience in his book Arran Men All, remarking, quote, "I never got over it. The bitterness born within me by this act only grew stronger with the passing of years. The bailiff who tried to bring about the eviction was Bartley Hernan, brother of Honoria Hernan and Máirtín McDonogh's uncle. Traumatic as the eviction was for the O'Flaherty family, Tom O'Flaherty, a lifelong communist and a talented writer, acknowledged that the treatment of his family was far from unique." This is quotation from Tom O'Flaherty. "I learned soon enough that this was no isolated act of vengeance vented on us, but the common lot of those who got caught between the iron fangs of the world's misfortune, and that the punishment for poverty was not only visited upon the parents, but even on their little children." Now, Vini Smo den scale le shin. So that's the eviction is one part of the equation, but the animosity between the families was of long standing. Liam O'Flaherty's mother, Maggie or Margaret or Maggie Ganley, was the sister of Thomas Ganley, who had in 1882 fired upon Máirtín McDonogh's uncle, the bailiff Bartley Hernan, and then fled to America, only confessing his guilt to his deathbed.
Be careful now.
Yeah?
We're in a certain house. And the man in the house has backed us for the last 5 years. If you even go wrong 2 seconds, we might be evicted.
I doubt it because
All right, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, you're mixing up two stories now, Joe. So I'll clarify where you're coming from. There had been this attempt on the life of the bailiff by Thomas Ganley, who'd basically done a runner, and that in itself was a dreadful case. Agus bhí macaint le Stephen in and it was really to do with a complete miscarriage of justice, which was vented again, and which the Hernans were involved in. They were very much complicit in that. In April of 1882. Bartley Hernan was fired upon by an unknown assailant. Now we know it was Thomas Ganley, who was one of Liam O'Flaherty's, his uncle. That same afternoon, a Joseph O'Flaherty of Gortnagapple was arrested on suspicion of having fired the shot. The alleged motivation was the fact that they were in arrears with their rent and they wanted to get rid of the only person who knew who owed what. A year later, another attack on Hernan happened when he was fired upon, and it generated much more controversy because Hernan identified a gentleman called Brian Kilmartin as having fired the shot. Although local suspicion fell on Ganley, Kilmartin was convicted on the sole and unsupported evidence of Bartley Hernan. Now, we don't know what his motivation was for doing that. It's a little bit complicated, but it was very much spite. It sounds like it was a spite thing. But he had no evidence whatsoever, and there's copious court proceedings in the newspapers about that case, about the Kilmartin case. In the Houses of Commons, like there was parliamentary debate about the Kilmartin case, because this man was clearly innocent. And the only person who'd identified him as being there was Bartley Hernan, McDonogh's uncle. But clearly he hadn't done it, because the dogs in the street were able to say it was Tomás Ganley who'd done it. He'd done a runner to America thereafter, and on his deathbed confessed, it was me, I was the one who shot it. But Brian Kilmartin was imprisoned for 2.5 years on a completely trumped up charge out of the spite of Bartley Hernan. So tá sé an scéal chas an Iwan McDonough's, but Dini eile nilán a bhí.
Yeah, Ita. Agus bhí sé blísún chatham about it.
Yeah.
That's where Tom Clark was as well.
Yeah.
He was treated very badly, as we can imagine, over there. And so was Tom Clark, of course, for years. They actually ate candles there. They were so hungry at a certain stage. And when he came home, there's a lot of information, and the man of the house knows it all, of course, and a lot of information about him coming home, and they had bonfires lit for him and all that, you know, and he got out. Okay. So,
But just the rud one eile sin, Joe, an cinnal heroin than rud fad sin na ban chéile Brian Kilmartin. And again, like is ban on Lodger Honoria Hernan, like Honoria Hernan, McDonough's mother, was a seriously strong, forceful woman. But so was Brian Kilmartin's wife, who was incredible in fighting his case, as was Father Donoghue, who was here. Yeah. Who lobbied for his release. But as a woman who had, and you know, there's a kind of Stephen Huisha, more on Idjikasaki, she wasn't a particularly well-educated woman, but the letters that she wrote to the papers and to members of Parliament and to the Chief Justice of Ireland were incredible letters, you know. And it's only because of that the man was released. But it was a complete gross miscarriage of justice. And the Bartley Hernan Kiontach as sin.
Yeah, all right. Now, we'll leave the personal details now and stuff like that. I think you get... Neil, no. Oh, yeah, Neil, not can do it up like. We'll differ after that. No, hold on, no. No, just... We'll push it past them. Would you like a break?
Yes.
Would you? Should we continue? We'll continue. No, we won't be too long. No, we won't go. We won't go too deeper into the personal details. No, because we have enough of that. Titillation works for a while, but we'll go back to the politics of the thing again. He was to be kidnapped in 1916. Tell us about that.
I suppose he was to be kidnapped because at the time that they were planning the rising, Galway was unique. As most of you know, the rising, 1916 rising, primarily happened in Dublin. Other risings around the country were almost universally quashed because of the actions of Owen MacNeill in contravening the order to muster. But the only places outside of Dublin that did rise were Ashbourne in County Meath and Galway, which had about, we reckon, about 600 men rose in County Galway over the county. Galway was unique in that Galway was effectively ruled by McDonogh. He was on every committee, he was in charge of every business. They were the biggest employers in the west of Ireland. They had by that stage, they had about 400 to 450 employees. By the 1930s, that was up to 700 employees, which was enormous. So, but then on Táchtaché, he was the main man business-wise in terms of commercial life of Galway, the economic life of Galway. So, the local organiser of the volunteers, George Nichols, decided that the best way for them to take both the Garda station, the RIC barracks and the army barracks in Renmore was to kidnap McDonogh and hold him to ransom. The idea being that he was such a big noise in Galway that they had one man, if you take him out of the equation, they'd be so petrified that they'd crumble. And so the plan was to arrest him, or to kidnap him and hold him to ransom and to shoot him in the event that he resisted. But ideally the instructions were, but try and keep him alive till we have the RIC barracks taken, and then we'll use him to try and get the Renmore, the army barracks as well. So, and there was an intention to do that. And the only reason that it didn't happen was because there was division within the ranks within the volunteers in Galway. in that Nichols, who was a solicitor, by the way, which is an interesting one, he was a local solicitor in Galway, he said, let's take him and shoot him if he doesn't agree. But Liam Mellows said, no, that's not what we're about. We don't kidnap innocent individuals, and we certainly aren't going to shoot one of Galway's leading citizens, as he was. So he dodged a bullet literally at that point, but word got back to him that the plan had been to arrest him or to kidnap him and to assassinate him. And of course, when the rising was put down in Galway, McDonogh was one of the first to say, shoot the ringleaders. You know, they have to be taught a lesson. Everybody else should be given, the chance to reform or to make good their actions. But he was never let forget that fact that he had condemned the leaders of the rising and said that their execution was justified.
Yes, and yeah, that's true. Now, the following year he was on that famous convention which was brought together to try to come to some agreement in Ireland. Of course, Sinn Féin boycotted the whole thing, but he was on that committee.
He was, yeah. He was on that committee because he was a great friend of John Redmond. John Redmond had huge regard for him and considered him a very able man and a very solid pair of hands. Really, in reality, he had no interest in politics other than local politics. But he was asked to go on this committee, and he did. So he was one of only 2 representatives from Connacht on the Irish Convention, which met and was, to be honest, a bit of a talking shop because things had sort of moved on by that stage. But I think the very fact that he was considered to be worthy of being included on that is an indication of just how important he was economically and in a civic capacity within Connacht, not just Galway, but within Connacht as a whole.
And later, of course, he became a TD. It's at the Dála. He did. Fine Gael, of course, naturally enough. Fine Gael TD. And of course, George Nichols became a Free Stater as well, and a blue shirt, well, maybe not a blue shirt, but a Free Stater. So here you had the man who was going to have him shot a few years before. Now they were on the same side. Isn't that true?
Yeah, there's a great story about the official opening of the theartach theatre in Galway, and they had a production of, I think it was Dermot Agus-Browne. Yeah. And all of the luminaries of Galway were there, including Lady Gregory and various other sundry individuals. But McDonogh was there, and he was seated beside George Nichols. So I'm sure that was a great conversation between the two of them. They'd moved on clearly from then. They were both sitting TDs for Galway. But his entry into politics was really about the fact that those in control were not businessmen. And they were useless. They were making a mess of the country. They were a caharga the move, basically. So we needed new blood and people who knew how to run a business. The country should be run like a business. That was his argument. And he had a particular, utter hatred for Fianna Fáil in particular. And Rodella Tagan Samach Siliower, Galway, he was Galway. Galway was the heart and soul of McDonogh, and everything east of the Shannon was foreign territory as far as he was concerned. And he was actually extremely xenophobic,
Right there.
extremely xenophobic. And in his attacks on De Valera, and there were many of them, he was one of the most vociferous and one of the most non-politically correct TDs in the Dáil. His most vicious attacks were on De Valera, and many cases his attacks were down to the fact that he said, an Irishman wouldn't have done this because De Valera had been born in New York. And he considered him a foreigner, He had absolutely no time for De Valera and for Fianna Fáil in general. And particularly the couple of ruddy siliour, the one story that I literally, it doesn't happen very often when you're doing historical research that you laugh out loud in an archive, but I literally guffawed. I nearly had to be carried out of the archive when I was reading an account of a debate in the Dáil between McDonogh, who was the TD obviously, and Sean Tubridy, Dr. Sean Tubridy, who was Fianna Fáil TD from Carraroe.
Ryan Tubridy's grandfather.
Yeah, his grandfather, yeah. And it seems that McDonogh, who was much older than the other TDs, he was in his 60s, he was 64 when he was elected, and often he nodded off in the chamber, you know. And apparently Tubridy spotted this and made some comment about, you know, Mr. McDonogh mustn't be afraid of all these nasty Bolsheviks here in the chamber. And McDonogh roused himself and savaged Tubridy, you know. And he said to him at one point, "Sure, what would you know? You're only a gutter snipe from Carraroe, you know." And he said, "I know more than you." And he said, "5 of your sort stuck together wouldn't make a decent man, you know." And this was in the Dáil chamber. So you just have to say, and the report in the newspaper was wonderful, because it said that this giant of a man stood up and obscured a puny deputy from Dublin with a vast canvas of Galway tweed, basically. And my understanding of it, that it actually was Sean O'Kelly that was sitting behind him. So he stands up and makes this speech, and apparently it said the role of his enunciation was like a series of waterfalls when he called him a gutter snipe from Carraroe, and there was a big roar in that. So it was an extraordinary career. His political career was remarkable, really remarkable.
You mentioned there in passing that they were calling the Fianna Fáilers Bolsheviks. The Blueshers were. So Sinn Féin people of today don't get too worried if they start calling all kinds of things, which they're at now. So there we are. Now I think we'll finish soon now, because you could.
Maar wie mis tógu me nach dainoch Máirtín Mór so big me. Maar dan ik toe trasna een energie. Good mitchaturt iasachtaí go cólachtaí bega an gáile agus an sin nóid nar sé an der sé nána go iasachtaí I caréis gur thóg sé a go gnónaí rannig tú trasna den. Bhí sé sin clustamsa mar bhí cuide go a winter héin a bhí nanim scra be Máirtín Mór chur deirilo.
Tá sam, yeah. Harla a lehéad, ní dáta be faoi sin. Ach is toch, you know, an curú an tolas chumsa faoin practice sin, let me say. Nach raibh an airgid ag na daoine, so he cinnal subbed them mar hampla, you know. Agus an sin, nuair nach éirí leis na gnónaí sin, gur thóg sé na deeds gon property. Harla sé sin, cínte. Níl dáta be faoi sin, yeah. Furas, I suppose, it's rud mór sin. Furas cead brana na deeds, na property deeds, agus bhí na mílte files a go siúd. Agus bhí me cainsle duine bháin in Gáilibh, agus tuair me hála a lehéad, you know, the ceiste chuirtuairm. Agus tuairt duine bháin, you know, oh yeah, dúirte, you know, sean lad in Gáilibh, dúirte, oh, he said, oh, of course, surely, hála a lehéad, dúirte. McDonogh went round with a wire cutters in one pocket and a stencil in the other that said property of McDonogh's. Agus nuair nach éirí leob, he basically cut the lock, put his own lock on, and property of McDonogh's. So I said, well, ad sin bulla. Agus baliob an fearboard the car na Gaillimh, agus baliob false fearboard the law car na Gaillimh. Yeah.
We want to kind of pre-job should we to play on the we should make it over fresh in Gaillimh. Agus we make kind of balakable chatting chocolate. To the good winter. We should stick a Raven Terrace nach Raven Terrace. Agus Cornelius we to be back the Connemara agus le winter wadi. Yes, Russell. Agus we published in Chinaka. Agus I saw an account of an inquiry about fishing at one stage, and one of them was mentioned there, and so was one of the McDonoghs, of course. But Cornelia was mentioned as having 15 boats some years before that.
Yeah.
Do you know which is big? Where are we now? Oh yes, these ladies over here who have listened to every word we have spoken yesterday and last night and today. Their grandfather was a famous boatwright, isn't that right? Sean O'Donnell. Now, we must remember that Máirtín Mór was supported by the peasants of Connemara and the peasants of Ireland. Big time. Believe me, as Donald Trump would say. He was. He was supported completely. Now, there is a case, for example, of when we were talking about that yesterday when Tom O'Flaherty talked about no fuel on the Aran Islands. There was a big thing going there at the time, no fuel. Máirtín Mór organised fuel into the Aran Islands. You know what I mean? So, interdependence or whatever you might call it. By the way, they were Irish speakers, of course. If you look at the census of 1901 or 1911, big house, servants, all of the servants speaking Irish, not surprising, of course, at the time. But Máirtín Mór's people are Irish speakers, all of them. So there was that connection.
But there was also, I think, a practical dimension to his. I mean, he was an absolute autocrat in the sense of. There's no doubt about that. Nothing happened in Galway without his permission or without his knowledge. But and you know, we were talking about this, Alice and Nislukia. You know, one of the things that he did was for his employees, and as I said, you know, he had 700 employees. He was the single biggest employer in the west of Ireland. But one of the benefits of being an employee of McDonogh's, of any of the McDonogh's empires, was that you got a free coffin when you died. Because they had a mill, a sawmills, and they made coffins. So one of the bonuses.
How did you know you were going to get it?
Well, I've been told by loads of people that you got your coffin.
But anyway,
loads of people. But no, this point you thought I should, Joe. The coffins were important because we thought, oh, isn't that atrocious? You got a free coffin. The really not arrogant, more an arrogant. You know, for poor people to be able to say, I'm going to get a decent burial, I'm going to get a coffin, was a big deal. Yeah. And Alice has, and your sister, I forget your sisters, have both confirmed that was the case. That he buried half of Galway, and if there wasn't money to be found for a funeral, that he gave that. But that's. Yeah. Irrelevant. It's poverty was one thing. Employment fustiocht vishishin harvatacht.
But Sean O'Donnell, how did we say Sean? We never said Sean, but we said Sean O'Donnell.
We used to say Sean O'Donnell, but very often the Connemara people would call him Johnny Loucos.
Johnny Loucos, yeah. Now Johnny Loucos, their grandfather, was a famous, very, very famous boatwright. You know, all I had to do was mention his name still out in Connemara. But you said that he always wanted to go in and get his timber there with Máirtín. Of course,
that would be Johnny Loucos' son, Jono.
Was that right?
Jono was the grandfather, Johnny Loucos.
Oh, sorry, yes. But they were from Lettermullen as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
But Jono moved to Galway.
What's that?
Jono moved to Galway.
I see what you mean.
And he built in Galway, and he and Máirtín Mór were buddies as far as that goes.
Yes. Okay, we're nearly finished.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because we're talking about the people and the support of the peasants and so on, that one of the most memorable passages in this book, for me anyway, is that the people from Aran come for market day, and it is they and they only who challenge and shame him.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I think we need to note that.
That's right, yeah.
And also, I just wonder about how the O'Flahertys would have seen the title "He Was Galway." I believe that's a quote. But whose shoes are we standing in if we say he was Galway? Was it him, or was it all the people who worked for him, the vast majority of the population?
Yeah.
The other side, the other class. I think that's something that we ought to at least say here.
No, you're absolutely right. And the answer to that, Jenny, is that it is so complicated, and I struggled so much with that whole issue. That I didn't say that about him. Obituaries about him said that for 30 years, and that was based purely on what he had achieved for Galway in terms of the industry in this town. You know, for example, we talked about Aran. He was responsible for establishing the lifeboat station on Aran when there was no appetite for putting one here, but he made sure that happened. He was not a saint. I make that very, very clear in the book. He was a very complex man. But when you look at his legacy, the Galway racehorse, for example, which is owned by the people of Galway. It's the only racecourse in the country that is owned by the people of Galway, by any private group of individuals, you know, and he set that up. Many of the industries that he set up kept people going during the war. He got a munitions factory in Galway, not popular, but it employed 120 women during the whole of this latter end of the First World War, when employment was hard to come by. But he did it, you know. He didn't do it for him. He made no money out of that whatsoever. It wasn't his factory. He got nothing out of it other than that he made the armaments boxes, you know. So there was always a bit of a plus for McDonogh, but not exclusively. But in terms of him thinking he was great, I don't think that was part of where he was at. He was a strange character who didn't like anybody to do anything that wasn't controlled by him. But at the same time, he wasn't a man who was banging his own drum and saying, aren't I fantastic? He did not lead an opulent life. He led a very, very frugal life. The house, I guess, I got an account of this from Tom Kenny of Kenny's Bookshop in Galway, who told me a great story, and he only told me after I'd actually finished writing the book, and I was raging, you know, as is always the case, you get the good stories when the book is printed. But he told me that when he went to, when the McDonoghs all died and the house was sold, he and his father were given the contract for dispensing of the books in the house. They got the book collection. So they went out to the house in Belmore in Salthill, a fine big house facing out to the prom. And they went out, and he said when he went into the house was absolutely crammed full of antiques. It was a dark, cluttered house with every fine house furniture and pictures, but to the point of being almost stifling, you know. But when you went upstairs, the master bedroom at the top of the stairs facing out into Galway Bay was McDonogh's room. And there was hardly anything in it. It was almost like a monk's cell, he described it as. There was just a bed and a desk and a table. But there was one really, really interesting thing. Anybody want to guess what that was?
Not a picture of his mother.
No, not a picture of his mother. No. The one, apart from the bed, the table, the chair, there was a telescope facing out to sea. And I just thought, that's it. He's keeping an eye on everything, you know. He just doesn't want to miss a trick here. I found that fascinating, I have to say. Yeah.
Having said all that, you would imagine he loved the trade unions, didn't he?
No, he did not. He did not. But again, here's the complexity of the man. He fought them hand over fist, not because he didn't like trade unions as such, but because as far as he was concerned, he was a good employer. He was really paternalistic. My employees, I will look after them, I will control them. The conditions were not great for employees. They were horrendous in conditions, many of them. The fertiliser factory was a poisonous place to work. It was a dangerous place. They had to lift heavy weights. But as far as he was concerned, he paid a decent wage for a decent day's work. When the 1913 lockouts happened and strikes in Galway, he completely took on the unions, decided to break them. He went after them. He physically attacked union leaders. He brought in blacklegs to break the strike, etc., etc. Classic William Martin Murphy stuff, right? But at the same time, he was also making sure that the wives and children of the strikers were given money. He provided local priests with money to give them money so that the families would not suffer. Now that's not hearsay, that's coming from the mouth of the main union organiser in Galway. And the reason that came out was because when the new administration came into being in 1922 and all of the old guard were being cleared out of the county council and the Galway Urban District Council, there was an election for the chairman of the council, and McDonogh had been chairman for 10, 15 years. He had been pretty much continuously chairman. But the new incoming was Dr. Walsh, a Sinn Féin candidate who was hugely popular, and everybody thought he's going to come in on a tide. And he did get elected. But the person who suggested McDonogh was William O'Halloran, who was the leader of the Trades Union Council in Galway. And he stood up to the shock and absolute astonishment of everybody in the council and said, I'm voting for the man who's done the most for Galway, not because I like him, not because I disagree with him. Tomorrow I might be fighting with him, But I'm doing this because he's the man who's done the most, and he's not full of talk like Walsh is. The Sinn Féin are promising us everything, but they're not delivering. That's Sinn Féin, yeah. But he said that's why. And my last point is he lost his job as a result of it. The union kicked him out because he supported McDonagh.
The man from Belfast.
It was funny. What I was going to say, maybe it should have been a subtitle that said, maybe it's a bit unfair on the main character here, is that the Connacht William Martin Murphy. But clearly from what you're saying, he was a bit softer than William Martin Murphy.
I don't think so. Gee,
Well,
anything but soft.
no, in the sense that if you're saying that he was behind the scenes.
He did. No, he did.
Yeah.
He did. That is absolutely true. Yeah. But I mean, I don't think William Martin Murphy would never have punched anybody in the face. William Martin Murphy was never in jail on 2 assault charges, as McDonagh was. Once when he was 67 years of age. He was up for assaulting a man in prison, and he got away with it. And his defence was, this is my favourite story about McDonagh. The judge a fella came into him from Spiddle, who had got paint for him, and he hadn't paid him. And so he came in again looking for more stuff on tick, and McDonagh said, no, not until you pay me the balance. And the man said, that's a disgrace, that's a disgrace. And McDonagh picked him up and physically threw him down the stairs and out of his property. And your man took a court case against him for assault. He tried to buy him, he tried to be bought off first of all, and McDonagh was having none of it and said, no, I'm not going to give you your money, I'll have my day in court. He had his day in court, and the court came before the justice, and the prosecuting lawyer said, you gave that man a bad blow, he was very badly injured. And McDonagh said, I did not. If I'd hit him a proper wallop, he'd have had more than a sore jaw. He said this in open court. And the judge decided that in 99.999% of cases, he would have agreed with Mr. McDonagh, and he was going to do so in this case. And he fined your man, he gave him a shilling in compensation.
That's what I've gone down well in little Mullen, I can tell you. That story. And on this island as well.
Extraordinary stuff. So yeah, physical, very much a product of his upbringing, a tough, rough upbringing, uncompromising. But because he was so powerful, who was going to challenge him, you know? And also physically large man, not Máirtín Mór by name, nor Máirtín Mór by nature, 6'3" and 16 stone at a time when men were not that big generally. So an imposing physical presence, which he used twice in his life and got himself into court. So, but at the same time, there's this other side. So there's a very complex man, very complex.
Nish, Thomas, you got a clear. I think that was interesting, wasn't it? At least. Very much so. Thomas, you got a clear no in Gaelge.
Sure. Oh, Máirtín Mór. Oh, wow.
Nuair a cáilú tá tóran seo ó chasa fós a radio na Gaeltachta.
That's it.
Agus is smá le daoine go na mare.
Yeah.
Smá cínte. Agus castar a radio na Gaeltachta. Siad órán a bhí ban as cantar le sin Miláin nuair a cáilú Máirtín Mór. Agus tuair sé léir go scaoib an ar a deacha a bhí na gnághine mar thugtar a mu sa gantar. Bliana take sé de sé babín an táileú a tanna bhí a man seo, is na chomá seo. Bliana take sé de sí tíú chreach í héháin ar háileach ar chuileáid sa tí, mar is sciúpa bás bhain an seanar álainn, Máirtín Mór a bhí na TD. Mar a chuin scéal brómach ar fud na háite, bhí lag agus láid iad an ólás faoi, mar bhí a garid cáilteach a chreach lágló, in nach cruachas o de di shreid. Trúna de dúna tugiú macha as a barlús álan ar cha sé híal. Tá sé de fúr go bromach cráte, níniuh na máireach a chuile lágá síal. Bhí de haar Thomas go bórtha cráte, Dr. Michael is beg na risise chrí. Bhí mar in íháileán an óghean álainn.
No, there you go.
Le cú in ie Máirtín ní warach sí. Listen to this about De Valera. Listen to this about De Valera, as Donald Trump said about the leader of North Korea, a smart cookie. We call war go ra De Valera go mór an éadleis. Ach mo léam, ní mar sin a bhí. mar na fuasin scéla go raibh sé écaí, chuir sé a bhólás I nniuúl dóibh faoi. That's true, by the way, as far as I know. De Valera being the smart cookie rings up and says he's sorry for the death of Máirtín Mór. Lár na bháideach bhí after an ardán, an sépe long as a go lehead muil. Bhí se go suasal as chulig ardán, ó an bháinín go dtí an TD. Now that's significant as well. They were all there from the fellow wearing the báinín, which would be the clothes of the peasants we grew from, and the TD, so, you know, the whole work. Níl bóthar na cosán na cawnial shráide ó hépe lord go dtín tawn ó gíl, nach ram rá agus páistí gol sa gári mar geall ar Máirtín a gol sa gíl. Bachráit an tafra go dic an lásin a cholin álinn gahan per sís, head a chud stórtha lesaithe a bhuilean ámud I chipa álinn agus a chud stórtha síl. Bhí chud báidhór tarní his do go lásin ón Máirtín pléisiúr go dtín saach seoil. An brata bhí ar a gúnaí náirte, ní ra siad an lásin a chaag leach rí. Chronne na hálaí sa gún an lásin ní óálaí sa chronna muil. Bháisiil siad isteachán mar bheith saitúr gáda agus bhí siad ruide ag dán ó gaí. In siúdach le seán cantal grána I té le chéile dí na bróin, lár na bháideach, bhí á chédí iad sínte cáilte le se crí. Tá me há íslí is an chroch le fáilead. This is significant too. Tá me há íslíthe is an chroch le fáilead, gus gon an túlead go cá ríd. An trum chlár tarníthe is an tnaim le fáisce. Is gá meach fabhar Máirtínad ciúcha sír. If you were up to be hanged, you were up there on the wherever, the gallows, and the rope was about to be pulled. If you had Máirtín's favour, you'd get free. That's what I believed, you see. Ní se lá wasil a chialar Máirtín, nach dug sé bíó agus lóistí ní. Bhí crí mór fashion ag gram a gúnlaí, a bócaí lán as iad go flahúr faoi. Ní filmise cen nach córham clise, níl mar an álín iste mo cheán, ach mulla Máirtín had ein an éirin, mar thug sé cawrhún ar bhí muid gáin. Cén bha bheith seanachas, ná cur síosair. Eléni intún ga men rascríb le pán, ach tá súla muir amas le héon wacaísa, gúil ar chathír socrithe, a riocht na rást. And then there's the other verse. We'll have to finish that verse, Seamus. There's another verse as well. But it's the same.
That's been another 1,000.
Yeah. Okay, so that gives an idea, doesn't it? I think. And now, what you have to do now, there are only 5 copies of this left in the world. Two now, is it? Now, and if you have any change, and if you buy that book, and if you have change at all, any change left, you should buy the other book, because obviously they can be read together. So you have the 2 books.
You buy this one, you get that one.
All right, I'll have the